Molly is a friend. Molly is a co-worker. And a lot of times, some of these things happen, and it's just uncomfortable to see.
Stephen A. Smith just lit the sports media world on fire with a leaked video of Molly Qerim that could flip everything upside down. Even though she already walked away from ESPN, this shocking footage threatens to shatter whatever reputation and legacy she had left. Secrets that were buried are suddenly out in the open. And for Molly, this could be the final crushing blow to her career. September 15th, 2025 seemed like just another Monday morning. Molly sat in her usual chair on First Take, moderating as she always had, balancing egos, controlling the chaos, and keeping Stephen A. Smith and the rest of the panelists on track. She signed off with her normal poise, completely unaware that it would be the very last time she ever closed a show. Hours later, everything collapsed. That evening, Sports Business Journal dropped a bombshell. Molly Qerim was leaving ESPN at the end of the year after contract talks had completely broken down. Imagine being her, at home, unwinding after another long day of live television, when suddenly your phone explodes with calls and texts. Your private negotiations, the ones you thought were confidential, are now splashed across the front page of every sports outlet in the country. Molly was blindsided. She took to Instagram that same night, posting a statement that revealed just how caught off guard she truly was. "This wasn't how I wanted this news to come out." Think about that for a second. 10 years of your professional life suddenly exposed in the rawest, most humiliating way possible. But the story didn't stop there. In fact, it took a turn no one saw coming. Instead of finishing out her contract quietly until December, Molly made a bold decision that sent shockwaves through ESPN headquarters. She walked away immediately. Not next month. Not next week. That night. Even ESPN President Burke Magnus admitted the timing stunned everyone. The one thing that was unexpected was the timing of all this. She put out a statement because there was a report on it. So, it kind of got out of our respective controls once that happened. There was no farewell special, no tribute montage, no graceful goodbye. Insiders are calling it an emergency exit. And no one explained it better than former ESPN host Marcellus Wiley, who broke it all down, revealing how fast a decade-long career can unravel when private battles suddenly explode into the public spotlight.
This was an abrupt landing. This is an emergency exit. This is an emergency landing. This is one of those for a reason.
Wiley understood something that most people missed. This wasn't just about money or contract terms. Something deeper was going on, and he explained it perfectly.
I give you what a therapist told me. Therapist told me it's not just how things end, it's why are they ending that way?
That's the million-dollar question. Why did Molly choose to exit this way? How could she host First Take on Monday, then vanish without a trace by Tuesday? September 16th, 2025, instantly became one of the most awkward mornings in the show's history. Fans tuning in for the usual back and forth between Stephen A. Smith and Molly Qerim were instead met with an empty seat. Smith sat alone at the desk, visibly emotional, preparing to deliver breaking news that would change everything.
Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show. And to say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement.
Wiley saw what others overlooked. This wasn't about salary or contracts. Something far deeper was at play, and he broke it down flawlessly.
Molly is a friend. Molly is a co-worker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, and she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years. And a lot of times, some of these things happen, and it's just uncomfortable to see.
Stephen A. kept it professional at first, but then he dropped a line that instantly raised countless eyebrows.
The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business. But it's not as if I know all the details. It was a contract negotiation that was going on.
Hold up, let's break this down. Stephen A. Smith told viewers that the details surrounding Molly's exit were none of our business, but then immediately started giving details. He claimed he didn't know everything, yet somehow found himself talking about contract negotiations on live television. Naturally, people were confused. But here's the real twist. It wasn't just about what Stephen A. said, it was about what Molly didn't say. When Molly posted her farewell message on Instagram, she thanked the fans. She thanked the show. But there was one glaring omission that sports media insiders instantly caught. She never mentioned Stephen A. Smith. Not once. Not even a casual reference. And that silence spoke volumes. Think about it. When big-name personalities leave shows, they almost always thank their co-hosts. Shannon Sharpe, for example, spent nearly 10 minutes listing names when he left Undisputed. That's the norm. It's a show of respect, a final acknowledgement of the people you built something with. Yet after a decade of sitting beside Stephen A., building one of the most dominant sports talk shows in history, Molly didn't say his name at all. And as one insider perfectly put it, sometimes silence.
Someone you work with for 10 years, you don't even mention them when you're gone. And you don't even give them that partner heads up on air. Like, hey, we did this thing together. This thing is over, right? So that lets you know the business was ugly behind the scenes.
That silence revealed more than words ever could about what was truly happening behind the cameras. Molly and Stephen A.'s relationship wasn't just about television. It carried personal tensions the public never saw. And that's where things took an even more intriguing turn. Industry veteran Marcellus Wiley, with his insider knowledge, caught onto something most people completely overlooked about the way Molly chose to walk away.
Why? Why did Molly want to go out in a blaze? Coming to work Monday and then I ain't coming to work no more and y'all figure it out. Stephen A. abruptly has to host a show for the whole.
This was sharp analysis. Wiley recognized Molly's exit wasn't some random decision. It was intentional, a calculated move. She wanted the world to notice. She wanted to make a statement. And what stronger statement than leaving Stephen A. Smith to sit alone on First Take, exposing just how vital she was to the show's success.
Why did it end like that? That's usually an inner cry of yo, I want to be noticed. I want y'all to know. I want y'all to feel me. I want y'all to hear me. I want y'all to see me. See how I go out, right? With a bang. She went out with a bang for...
This wasn't just someone quitting their job. This was someone making a statement. Molly Qerim's departure wasn't about walking away quietly. It was about her value, her contributions, and the way she felt she'd been treated inside ESPN. And the deeper you dig into what was happening behind the scenes, the more you realize Molly had every right to be upset. The sports media world immediately erupted with speculation, but nobody really understood what had gone wrong. At least not until details about the contract negotiations and power dynamics at ESPN started to surface. That's when the picture became clear and ugly truths about how business really gets done at the network came to light. Stephen A. Smith's role in all of this wasn't just big, it was central. Money, power, and betrayal were all woven together, and they ended up destroying a partnership that had lasted a decade. So let's get into the real meat of the story. The money and the negotiations that tore everything apart. Because once you hear the numbers and who was pulling the strings, you'll understand exactly why Molly felt she had no choice but to leave in such a dramatic fashion. Let's start with the money, because that's where this mess really began. According to multiple industry insiders, Molly was earning around $500,000 per year as host of First Take. To most people, $500,000 sounds like incredible pay. But in the context of ESPN and the juggernaut that First Take had become, it was laughably low, almost insulting. Why? Because sitting right next to her every single day was Stephen A. Smith, pulling down over $20 million annually. That's not a typo, $20 million. Do the math, and that's 40 times Molly's salary. Think about the optics. Two co-hosts, both essential to the success of the same flagship show. Yet one was making generational wealth, while the other was left fighting for basic recognition. But it gets worse. While Molly struggled to secure fair pay, she had to watch as other ESPN personalities, people who didn't even host daily shows or couldn't pull consistent ratings, collected paychecks significantly larger than hers. Imagine how demoralizing that must have been. You're anchoring the network's most visible morning program, keeping egos in check, ensuring the show runs smoothly every single day, and yet you're being compensated less than colleagues whose platforms can't even find an audience. Molly wasn't just asking for more money to stay where she was. She was asking for growth, for expanded opportunities within ESPN. Specifically, she wanted the chance to launch her own show, something similar to the path Max Kellerman took when he transitioned from a First Take contributor to hosting his own platform. That wasn't unreasonable. Molly had a decade of credibility under her belt and had proven she could command an audience. Asking for career progression was the natural next step. But ESPN's response revealed everything about the power structure inside the company. Not only did they refuse to give her an expanded role, they weren't even willing to significantly raise her pay for staying in her current one. The message was crystal clear. You can stay where you are for basically the same money, or you can leave. That's it. No growth, no recognition, no reward for the years she spent helping build one of ESPN's crown jewels. And here's where things get really dark. Because Stephen A. Smith wasn't just her co-host. He was also the executive producer of First Take. That meant he had real influence over the show's budget, personnel decisions, and overall direction. Think about that dynamic. Molly wasn't just negotiating with ESPN executives. She was essentially negotiating against someone she sat beside on set every single day, someone who directly benefited from keeping her salary lower, because that left more money available for other areas of the production. When Stephen A. proudly calls First Take his show, he's not just being dramatic. He literally has executive authority over it. And that reality changed the entire tone of Molly's negotiations. This wasn't just about her fighting for a raise. It was about her fighting against a system where the person next to her, the face of the show, also held the power to influence whether she got it or not. Over time, stories began to leak that revealed just how deep Stephen A.'s influence ran inside ESPN. His voice carried weight not only on air, but in the boardroom. He wasn't simply a star, he was a kingmaker. And for Molly, that dynamic was impossible to ignore. She realized she wasn't just undervalued, she was outnumbered. That's why her exit wasn't random. It wasn't emotional. It was calculated. A statement. And by leaving the way she did, Molly forced the entire sports world to confront the uncomfortable truth. She wasn't just replaceable background noise. She mattered. And walking away was her loudest way of proving it.
When he signs off on you, when he signs for you, you get what you want. But guess what? There's a flip to it as well. When he doesn't sign off on you, when he doesn't sign for you, you don't get what you want.
This power dynamic explains a lot about why First Take has seen so much turnover over the years. Just look at the cases of Kerry Champion, Max Kellerman, and most recently Shannon Sharpe. 3 high-profile personalities who all left under circumstances suggesting they didn't have Stephen A. Smith's full backing. The Shannon situation is especially revealing. Insiders pointed out that Stephen A. seemed to know ahead of time what was coming for Sharpe. He was even quick to make public comments while the situation was still playing out. That kind of timing strongly suggests he was in executive-level conversations, meetings where critical personnel decisions were being made. And yet, Sharpe himself wasn't even at the table. Now let's connect this back to Molly, because this is where the betrayal element becomes crystal clear. Reports revealed that Fox Sports reached out with a competing offer. $2 million a year for 3 years, plus bonuses. That's 4 times her ESPN salary. With that on the table, Molly asked ESPN to match it, or at least offer expanded opportunities that would make staying worthwhile. But instead of fighting to retain a decade-long veteran who helped anchor their most successful show, ESPN essentially shrugged and said, "Take it or leave it." And the worst part? The fallout after she walked away. Rather than keeping quiet and allowing her to exit gracefully, Stephen A. went on air and made comments that revealed far more than he probably intended. His words turned Molly's quiet exit into a public spectacle.
We all make decisions that we deem to be in our best interest for whatever reason. And that story is for her to tell. Do I have an idea? Of course I do. Am I going to share it with you? No. Because again, that's her story to tell.
At first, Stephen A. kept things respectful, insisting he wouldn't reveal private details. But just days later on his podcast, he dropped a bombshell. He began discussing contract negotiations in so-called general terms. But anyone paying close attention realized he wasn't being vague at all. He was indirectly addressing Molly's situation, and the implications were stunning.
Having said that, I want to move on to a broader subject in regards to this. And this part is not about Molly. But when you have negotiations and you're talking with people and you're going back and forth and you're hearing things that you may not want to hear or feeling things you may not want to feel, even though you're valued, even though people are acknowledge those kind of things. We live in a world where we have to grow up. And again, I'm not talking about Molly.
He insists he's not referring to Molly, yet every word that follows says otherwise.
But I'm watching, and I've been watching over the last several years, people in this business fall by the wayside because we forget that all of us ultimately answer to people. We don't get to define our own value. We don't get to define our own worth.
By now, fans were confused. Stephen A. kept insisting he wasn't talking about Molly, yet he spent minutes discussing contract disputes, overvalued talent, and people fading away. What else could he mean? Then, without even realizing it, he hammered the point home with a statement that left no doubt.
But it can all evaporate in a snap if you lose perspective. And you forget that everybody, and I mean everybody, answers to somebody.
This is where the dots really started connecting for people. Stephen A. Smith was standing on his platform, delivering what sounded like a lecture. He wasn't just talking about contracts. He was talking about power, about knowing your place, about not overvaluing yourself. And all of this came just days after his co-host of 10 years, Molly Qerim, walked away from ESPN after feeling undervalued and disrespected. To many, the message couldn't have been clearer. Molly had overplayed her hand. She had forgotten her place in the hierarchy, and now she was paying the price for it. Whether Stephen A. intended to send that message or not almost didn't matter. That's how it was being interpreted throughout the industry. And this is where the controversy exploded. Because what Stephen A. said next would spark an uproar so loud that even other media figures began calling him out publicly. And once you look at the full context, you understand why so many felt Stephen A. had completely betrayed his former partner. His hypocrisy was on full display. Stephen A. was essentially giving a masterclass on humility in contract negotiations, saying the first job of any employee is to make money for their bosses, and then respectfully ask for their share. The implication? Molly had gotten the balance wrong. She had been too demanding, too bold, not humble enough. But here's where things go off the rails. And here's the part the mainstream media has mostly ignored. Stephen A. Smith lecturing anyone about humility in contract talks is like the pot calling the kettle black. Why? Because his own history of contract controversies is nothing short of explosive. Let's rewind to his 2024 negotiations with ESPN. Stephen A. didn't just quietly meet with executives behind closed doors. No, he publicly demanded $25 million per year and turned his contract into a circus. He went on podcasts. He gave interviews. He openly campaigned for his payday in front of millions. Humble? Hardly. This was a full-on publicity blitz. And it gets even wilder. During those same 2024 negotiations, Stephen A. went on the OG's podcast and accused his critics of trying to sabotage his contract talks. He actually suggested there was a conspiracy against him. You think I haven't noticed the steam has elevated since my contract's coming up? You think I'm that stupid? These were his own words. Now fast forward to Molly. He's on camera, warning about people who overvalue themselves and forget their place. The same man who once accused NBA players of trying to derail his contract negotiations because they didn't like his takes was now shaming his former co-host for daring to ask for more. And then came the kicker, the quote that made jaws drop. During his own 2024 negotiations, when asked about reports that he was seeking a $100 million deal over 5 years, Stephen A. compared himself to Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. That's right, he said he deserved the kind of money usually reserved for NFL quarterbacks. So let's pause and absorb the hypocrisy. Stephen A. told Molly she needed to be humble, that she couldn't set her own value, that she needed to remember everyone has a boss. Yet when it came to his own deal, he loudly declared his worth, compared himself to an NFL star, and made zero apologies for demanding the biggest paycheck in sports media. But the hypocrisy goes even deeper than that. Stephen A.'s contract history is littered with dramatic exits, heated disputes, and ego-driven decisions. Back in 2008, he actually got fired from ESPN after a messy contract fight. He was unemployed for more than 10 months. And later, he admitted it was his own ego that ruined the negotiation. He let pride take over, and it cost him his job. So when Stephen A. stood there lecturing about people falling by the wayside because of bad contract demands, people couldn't help but laugh at the irony. This is the same man who nearly tanked his own career over money. The same man who once stormed out of ESPN, only to crawl back when his leverage dried up. And that's why his comments about Molly felt so personal and so hypocritical. He was projecting his own history onto her while pretending to be the voice of reason. But the industry knew better. They remembered his $25 million demands. They remembered his Dak Prescott comparison. They remembered his accusations of sabotage. The truth is, Stephen A.'s lecture wasn't about humility at all. It was about power. It was about reminding everyone who controls the room, both on camera and behind the scenes. Molly wanted growth. She wanted fair pay. She wanted recognition. But instead, she got a very public reminder of where she stood in the ESPN hierarchy. And when Stephen A. Smith said those words about people forgetting their place in negotiations, the mask slipped. He wasn't talking in general terms. He was talking about her.